Hello and welcome to the Late Fragments podcast, in which I discuss the apparently verboten subjects of politics, money, sex and religion with remarkable octogenarians and some nonagenarians. This week, I'll be talking to the historian Lady Antonia Fraser. Now 91 years old, she's still hard at work writing her next book, A Diary About Old Age. The days of weighty historical tomes may be behind her, but the renowned biographer of Mary Queen of Scots, Marie Antoinette, Oliver Cromwell, and most recently Lady Caroline Lamb is still very much making her mark. This interview is slightly shorter than some. Just last year, the grandmother of 20 was hospitalised after a bad fall, but Lady Fraser, resplendent in pearls and on the eve of a party to meet the latest cast of her late husband Harold Pinter's play The Homecoming, still talks lucidly about her extraordinary childhood. Her father, the Earl of Longford, was a lifelong advocate of penal reform. Her career, her marriages, and her enduring faith. I was once told, "You write like a man," she says. I took it as a compliment. I hope you enjoy listening. Lady Antonia Fraser, thank you so much for agreeing to be on Late Fragments.
Pleasure.
We're going to talk about 4 different things, if that's okay. Politics, sex, money and religion, which are apparently the 4 things one's not meant to talk about.
Not even religion.
Apparently not. Does that worry you, talking about the things one's not meant to talk about?
I think it's rather exciting.
I know that shared social politics were the dominating aspect of your childhood.
Yes, both my parents were very enthusiastic members of the Labour Party. They both came from highly conservative backgrounds and put them aside. And they both stood for Parliament, for the same constituency. My father stood twice for Oxford and my mother stood once. So that I thought the Labour Party was it, the Labour government was it in 1945. I thought Mr. Attlee was the greatest man. It was interesting.
Did you? What did you think of Winston Churchill?
Oh, that was different. He was the greatest man. And I remember listening to him on the radio. We were allowed to stay up late if he was broadcasting. And then I read that it was going to be his birthday. So I wrote him a wonderful poem, magic poem, Milton, Forget It. And then I posted it. I took a stamp from my mother's reverie and I posted it, just Mr. Churchill, number 10 Downing Street. Went to the end of the road, posted it. And a little later, my mother said, "Oh, by the way, Mr. Churchill thanked you on the radio." I was so excited. I believed it. What I didn't realise for many years was what he actually said was, "Mr. Churchill wishes to thank all those who sent me presents or poems or cards, you know." I believed it was me.
Oh, did you share your parents' politics?
I thought it was the only thing. You know, I was very young. Also, they were idealistic in their politics, which I remain. I mean, the politicians I like are the good ones, you know, the people who are idealistic. And the 1945 Labour government was remarkable.
Do you remain engaged with politics?
Well, I'm interested in the government of my country, put it like that, but I don't remain engaged. I never wanted to be a politician, which I think is important, because I think quite a lot of my relations, having been brought up in politics, thought I could do that. And I loved going canvassing. I really enjoyed it. I liked knocking on doors, because I'm very inquisitive, poking my nose in and saying, "I'm Mr. Pakenham's little girl." And then people would come and say, "Oh, aren't you sweet, aren't you lovely, canvassing for your father?" And then as we went, as we departed, I would say, "Well, I hope you're voting for my father." "Oh, no, we always vote Tory." There were rules canvassing. You weren't allowed to take food from them, which I did always.
A biscuit or two.
Yes, I always helped myself.
Your father was converted, I believe, to socialism by your mother. He was a conservative initially.
Yes, when I was born, he was working in the Conservative Central Office. It's absolutely true. My mother became a socialist first, but he became a Catholic first.
So he converted her to Catholicism.
Yes, it's rather neat.
Theirs was obviously a great love story, your parents.
Yes, it was. And they just missed 70 years because my father thoughtlessly died a month early. And we had a family row about whether we should have a party for it or not.
Did you have one?
No.
No.
Because, I mean, the whole point was that both of them would be there. But anyway, it was a wonderful marriage. And of course, I didn't realize it at the time. It's a privilege to have parents who really adore each other. And it was only later when I got to see some of my friends had parents who didn't adore each other, I saw how lucky I was.
A great base of security for you and your siblings.
Absolutely.
And were they politically incendiary in their dealings with each other?
No, I think my mother kept an incendiarism for the home of sort of snapping, Frank, don't leave your cup on the draining board without washing, that sort of thing. But in public, she wasn't at all incendiary, and she did adore him.
Did they agree politically all the time?
I would say they agreed all the time. I certainly wasn't old or clever enough to spot where they didn't agree. So, I mean, inevitably, two clever people, they can't have agreed all the time, can they? No. But I wouldn't know.
And you then went on in your own life to marry a Tory MP.
Yes, I didn't notice. That was the thing.
You didn't notice?
I didn't notice, and I found a letter of my mother after I got engaged saying, I wonder how Antonia will make out being the wife of a Tory MP. And I thought, what? Oh, gosh. I did know he was an MP and a Tory, but I'd not sort of thought about it.
Were they horrified, your parents?
I think between us they must have been. I mean, I think their first child, and they were quite a well-known family because there were so many. My mother was in the process of having 8 children. I think at the time of Suez, which is when I got married in 1956, they had a wedding celebration of their own wedding, 25 years, and Hugh was the only Conservative. Well, because, everyone else was against Suez and he was in favour of Suez.
But you didn't really notice?
I didn't. I didn't. Well, naturally I voted for him like a good wife, and I did more canvassing and I liked it just as much. I hope you will vote for my husband. But you see, I wasn't party political. I was interested in politics, in the characters of people and how they reacted, but I wasn't interested in doing it myself.
Inevitably, your books have an awful lot of politics within them, the politics of the people you're writing about.
I mean, if you think of someone like Oliver Cromwell, it's very political, isn't it? And I thoroughly enjoyed doing it, although nobody wanted me to do it.
They didn't?
No, because I'd done Mary Queen of Scots, and they wanted me to do Scottish Queen of Mary, or anyway, Bonnie Prince Charlie, or Marie Antoinette. And I said, what? Write about Marie Antoinette? Which, of course, I then went and did.
I did have one question, which is apparently you voted Tory once, and that was for Margaret Thatcher, but that was because you wanted to see a woman in power.
I voted Tory again. I voted for her again. I admired her greatly.
It leads me on, if you're happy to go on,
yes,
to sex, in terms of gender issues, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I did read you say once that all intelligent women must be feminists.
Yes, I did say that. I definitely did. And I hold to it many years later. I mean, it's not the whole of life, but I Well, I don't see why a woman should be a prime minister.
Well, you've written about never having any sense of inferiority ever in your life because of your sex.
No, but that was partly because of my mother, who didn't have any inferiority herself and saw to it that I jolly well didn't. But partly because I went to a boys' school when I was 8. I went to the Dragon School in Oxford, where I was tremendously happy and moderately successful. And it was, in those days, 300 boys and 30 girls, something like that. And girls were all top of the form all through the school. And I thought that's the way it is, you know. Girls are just as bright, if not brighter. So I got this idea. And we learnt Latin and Greek like boys. And I got the idea that girls were as bright as boys, which I have held to.
As bright and as able on the sports pitch, because you were a fine rugby player.
Well, I think I certainly was a rugby player. I think I've slightly exaggerated the quality of my play, because there are very few people around who remember, but there are some. There's someone called Sir Geoffrey Owen, whose son was at school with my son, and we were walking down the rugby pitch, and he said, "I remember you herring down the wing." And I said, "You do? How wonderful." And then I saw Orlando, my youngest son, looking at me with absolute amazement. And I said, "Why are you looking so surprised? I always told you about that." But he said, "But Mum, we thought you made that up to make us laugh."
Some of your most notable subjects, I suppose, have been women who've broken convention. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And how has your work and your study of these women informed your view of a woman's place in society?
That's a very interesting question, because I began studying history so young that it sort of all melded together. It's rather difficult to tell how much I was influenced by the study of it. I suppose I was tremendously influenced. I'm thinking about the various subjects. You see, I read a book, I've got my copy somewhere, beautifully rebound, called Our Island Story. And I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. I then thought with great arrogance, I was 5. I can do this. And a remarkable amount of the people in it, or rather, a remarkable amount of people I have written about were in it, like, above all, Mary Queen of Scots, with her 4 ladies in waiting, little Murray, and I altered it to 5. And there was another little Murray, and she was called Antonia Fraser. Was
it their independent spirit that attracted you to these subjects?
I think so. Their glamour, you know, they were all glamorous. I started to study for a book about Queen Alexandra, wife of Edward VII, and I just found myself terribly bored. I couldn't sort of give my life to it, and I stopped doing it. And I realised it's like marriage, you know, you got to give everything. And so I've really adored all my subjects, including Cromwell. I admired him terrifically.
You do epitomise yourself and in your life the way that as a woman one can be glamorous and also intelligent.
Well, I think glamorous is jolly kind. I love the idea of being glamorous. But I think I was, as I put it, I was quite pretty for someone who was quite clever, and quite clever for someone who was quite pretty. Because the combination went well.
You've been married twice and you've had 6 children. And I know that you will have been asked before how on earth you managed. I mean, it's the constant dilemma for women how to manage a career and motherhood.
Exactly, and it has been for queens. When the last beloved queen, when she died, and everybody was writing about it, I wrote about how she'd solved the problem of the queen regnant. The real problem of the queen regnant is not the reigning, but that she must also have children and a husband. And our last queen had a very happy home life, really, didn't she?
Absolutely. She epitomised that you can do both. Probably felt easy to you, but was it enormously stressful?
No, it wasn't. But I like to enjoy myself. Luckily, I read fast, and I like order. I like sort of self-discipline. I like making decisions, like no one's to come into my room between 9 and 12. And I've still got a wonderful notice written by my daughter Natasha, which says, "Do not come in. This means you. Otherwise, no conversation, no pocket money, and worst of all, no mother." I framed it.
Does one have to be a little bit selfish to be successful?
That's when people wrote to me, which they did, saying, "I'm just as clever as you, how do you do it?" I would write back saying, "You've got to be selfish at one point in the year. You've got to put yourself first," as Tolstoy doubtless did.
That does lead us on to money. Was money something that motivated you?
Lack of money motivated me. The fact that I couldn't buy drugs. It was really competitive with my friends. You know, that my friends were probably, their parents were doctors, and, you know, they're just a little bit better off buying dresses or shoes or things. You know, it's pathetic, really.
Your parents were very well connected, weren't they? But not necessarily very well off.
Oh, no, they weren't. My father was the second son. Both my father and my first husband were second sons and had no money.
So you grew up with an awareness of how difficult the lack of money can be.
Yes. I grew up with an awareness of money and how you needed it. Not large sums at all. Also that you had to earn it, which I think not everyone of my sort at the time grew up with that feeling. I knew, you know, if you want money, go and get it.
It's amazing, though, because a lot of women of your generation would just have thought that they would marry it rather than earn it. It's very progressive of you, really.
I think having a mother who stood for Parliament and did things had an effect on me. But I also liked, I don't want to all talk about money, I don't want to underestimate it. I really loved doing it.
Your work, of course. And money was a happy byproduct.
Yes. It was in a different life somehow, the whole money thing.
What would you say to somebody who was setting out on their career and concerned about making money?
Keep a diary, and then it will keep you.
Oh, really?
Well, you can keep a diary for free. You could do it every day. Just get up 10 minutes earlier, and then you have a document, and then you can do all sorts of things with it.
Do you still keep a diary?
I am at the moment, yes.
And you've done that all of your life?
No, I stopped after Harold died. I couldn't bear to. But I've done it a lot of my life. I'm doing it at the moment because I'm doing a little book called Diary of a Jolly Old Lady.
You must miss him terribly.
Terribly.
But what an amazing love story that was.
Yes, it was. I do think in Must You Go, I captured some of it. When I read that again, which I don't read all the time because sometimes it's too much for me.
Can we move on to religion?
Yes.
So we spoke of your mother converting your father to socialism and your father converting your mother to Catholicism. Was Catholicism something that appealed to you romantically yourself?
Absolutely. I always wanted to be a Catholic. I loved going to the Catholic Church in Oxford, St. Aloysius, with my father. My mother did not love it and did not love me going, because she was brought up a Unitarian, abandoned it, and didn't, for the time being, want any religion. So there was the only division, I think, in their lives, which I don't remember much about. It was at the beginning of the war. I think, they also had other things to think about.
Has your faith nurtured you your whole life? Has it been unwavering?
No, I spent a lot of time at Mass wondering why on earth God allowed babies to die in Auschwitz, that sort of thing. I couldn't say it was unwavering.
And today?
Well, today, I find it rather difficult to go to Mass unless somebody really takes me. So I watch it on live stream, which is one of the most wonderful things. Farmer Street, my church, live streams all its Masses. I was just thinking once, I was here, I was thinking I have many more religious feelings here because I'm not bothered by people in the church. I don't think about someone's hat or someone's hair or something. And I was just thinking I'm really quite holy. And then I realised I was painting my nails frosty pink.
At the same time. Do you still pray?
Yes, pray like mad when I'm in trouble.
And it's a huge comfort, of course, as one gets older or if life is difficult.
Absolutely. And as the real horror of old age, which nobody ever tells you, you think it's about yourself. It isn't. It's about the people you lose,
Yes.
I mean, at my age, 91, I'm afraid an awful lot of my contemporaries have died, naturally.
But you have an awful lot of, I imagine, younger friends and family.
Yes.
And
I'm very lucky. I've got lots of family and friends, but I mean, it's the actual people. You miss the people.
Are you still sustained by your writing life?
I'm sustained by having written. I'm not sustained. I don't. Well, actually, I mean, this time last year I was writing madly, and my previous book I wrote in lockdown. Yes, I think I am. I don't know how I'd be without it.
Are you proud of yourself?
I think I should be, but I can't. I don't sort of bother to be proud. I might try being proud, but it'd be a slight waste of time, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be better to write another book?
Thank you for listening to Late Fragments with Antonia Fraser. As ever, if you're enjoying the podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe on your podcast app of choice, or you can follow us on all the usual social media channels. In the next episode, I'll be talking to the former war reporter turned politician, Martin Bell. In the meantime, my thanks to Louis Fulford-Smith for the sound production and edit, and Harry Dundas for the music and original score. Until next time, goodbye.